Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to talk about an anti-corruption body that's, well, all roar and no bite. We're looking at the Watchdog in Meghalaya, a classic case of what you might call a paper tiger. So let's just dive right in. How does an institution that's supposed to be the public's #1 defender against corruption end up being, completely toothless? That's the big question we're going to unpack today. Okay, so first things first, what even is a Lokayukta? Well, it's designed to be an independent ombudsman, a powerful investigator with real authority to dig into complaints against public officials and make sure people are held accountable. And that word, independent, is absolutely key. But here's the problem. In Meghalaya, there's this huge gap between the idea and the reality. The Lokayukta there looks, for all intents and purposes, completely powerless. And that creates a really dangerous situation, right? It gives this false impression that someone is watching, while the powerful can pretty much do as they please. So, let's get into the nitty-gritty of why this is happening. It really all boils down to this one critical loophole in the law. A loophole that basically pulls the watchdog's teeth before it can even take a bite. And, we don't have to talk about this in abstract terms. We can look at a massive, real-world example, the illegal coal mining syndicate that's been running in the state. This is exactly the kind of huge, systemic corruption a Lokayukta is built to take on. So check out how this went down. The Lokayukta actually tried to do its job. It ordered a probe by the CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation. But guess what? That order was immediately challenged in court, and that's when the watchdog's fatal flaw was exposed. It had to back down and was left with only one option: to just advise the state government to investigate itself. And get this, in its own ruling, the Lokayukta basically admitted defeat. It said it had, and I'm quoting here, no scope but to take this weaker path. I mean, that's the watchdog itself saying, my hands are tied. It's a pretty stunning admission of powerlessness. So you can see this isn't just some dusty legal technicality. This loophole is basically a built-in escape clause for corruption, and it has some serious, real-world consequences for how the state is run and for whether people trust the system at all. Let's just put this side by side so it's crystal clear. What a real watchdog needs is the power to independently order an agency like the CBI to investigate. But what does the Lokayukta in Meghalaya actually have? The power to advise. It's the difference between a command and a polite suggestion. And this is the real kicker. The system creates this completely impossible conflict of interest. It means the state government, the very same people who might be involved in the corruption, gets the final say on whether an independent investigation happens at all. It's basically like asking the main suspect to run their own investigation. It just doesn't work. So what's the end result of all this? Well, it's exactly what you'd expect. Big complaints against powerful people, they just get disposed of with some weak recommendations. The Lokayukta turns into a bureaucratic step you have to go through, not a feared watchdog. And at the end of the day, high-level officials are just not held accountable for their actions. Okay, so it sounds pretty bleak, I know, but it doesn't have to be this way. The problem here is actually really clear, which means the solutions can be too. Let's talk about how this paper tiger could finally get some real teeth. The fix, fundamentally, has to start with changing the law. The Lokayukta needs what are called suo motu powers. That's the ability to start investigations on its own without waiting for a complaint. It also needs the clear authority to direct agencies like the CBI. And probably most important of all, that need for state government approval has to go. Those changes would be a total game changer. But listen, changing the law, that's just one piece of the puzzle. There's also a really powerful and, frankly, essential role for regular citizens to play in all of this, to force accountability even when the system is weak. Think of it like a citizen's toolkit. Anyone can use the Right to Information Act, the RTI, to track what's happening with these big complaints. You can use that info to go public if there are crazy long delays, and you can shine a spotlight on these weak, toothless judgments. You know what they say? Transparency is a powerful disinfectant. So, at the end of the day, it all boils down to this one simple fact. For any anti-corruption watchdog to actually work, it has to have the legal power, the statutory authority to act on its own, without interference from the very people it might need to investigate. And that leaves us with one final, pretty uncomfortable question. When you see an anti-corruption body that seems to be designed from the start to be powerless, you really have to ask yourself, who is a paper tiger like this truly meant to protect?